Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry. Today we'll be recording episode 50 of the series. It's kind of a crazy milestone, actually. Um, yeah, it's been a little bit. Very briefly going to go over that. I wanted to break from the game because I felt like I was kind of pushing out videos relatively quick before my break. Then I got sick. And while I was sick, I played Persona 3, and I was finishing that up until fairly recently. And here we are now. But we're back. And yeah, that's that. Here we are. So last episode, we're just gonna jump right into that. No, like I said, no need to harp too much on the break. I don't think. Last episode was a really big one. It had arguably the best scene in the game, in my opinion. The junkyard scene where Rena kind of confesses her sins and everybody kind of eventually comes together to decide to help her, right? With the bodies, right? And to not like, I guess not like abandon her, right? Help her in her time of need, right? And that was a fantastic scene. I'm not really doing it justice with that very brief explanation, but you know, if I sat here and analyzed it like the whole thing, we'd be here for 20 minutes before the video started. So, you know, if you want to see that again, just check out the last video. But a fantastic scene. But afterwards, they go and bury the bodies, and notably in the tip, they mention that over the summer break, they're going to be cutting down the trees in the forest that they buried these bodies. So I have a feeling Rena is not going to get this carefree life that she wanted from here, right? It's not going to go how she wants it to. But also, another big thing that I think needs to be discussed, because I could see this coming up, maybe not this episode, but soon, is Keiji started to remember the Tepe incident in Chapter 3. We're seeing him remember something that he shouldn't remember, which is really interesting. I wonder if that's maybe how we're going to get some information about Chapter 1 or Chapter 3, like in here, right? Maybe that's how we're going to get part of our answers. Very interesting. So I'm not really sure where we're going to go this chapter. I almost wonder if this is going to be we're back to the good times and we have like a kind of just fun, chill episode, right? Or at least maybe the first half. It might also have Watanagashi in here because I know that was coming up. Maybe we'll kind of start to see some stuff go down with the Watanagashi here. Because I mentioned this last episode, but the build up that we expected from this route is done, actually. Look, there's obviously more to expect from the route, right? But the route starts with the promise of that junkyard scene, right? Where Rena confesses, right, to what she's done. But we're done with that. So it's really hard. I don't know where we're going to go from here, right, completely, right? So lots of directions it could still go. I'm super interested to see what they're going to be. And let's just go ahead and jump right into them. Continue.
笑い続けていれば、
She believed that if she kept
い
laughing,
つ
that
か
she would be
幸せ
happy.
にな
She
れる
believed
と
that
信
if
じ
she
てき
cared
た。
about someone, that person would care
誰
for
か
her
の
as
ことを
well.
思えば、相手も自分を思ってくれると信じてきた。
It's the kind of mild, spoiled dialogue, but it's okay.
悲しかった思い
Leaving
出を
sad
置き
memories
去りにして、
behind, the girl turned forward to face tomorrow.
明日を見つめようと前を向く。甘えず、
Without being spoiled, without relying on anyone, all alone, to
たった
carve a
一人
path
で
toward the future.
未来を切り開くために、
Well, it doesn't feel like as blatant of like a spoiler.
その先にあるもの
What
は
awaits her, is it happiness? Is it
幸せか。
unhappiness?
それとも
I'm gonna let it finish.
不幸せか。罪滅ぼし。誰かを愛したかった。
Wanted to love
でも
someone,
本当は
but the truth is,
誰かに愛されたかった。
I wanted to be loved. Okay, that doesn't really feel like big spoilers or something for once. Like that kind of already just feels like more or less stuff that we kind of already had an idea of. I hate not being able to see those in the text log because I forget the exact words they used, right? So it's kind of hard to analyze those, but we can probably just move on for now. So we're starting right at Watanagashi. So we might have like a fun Watanagashi night, right? And then the next day it's like, they're dead, Jim. You know, with Takano Tomatake. Let's just go ahead and let's get it moving. Let's see what's going on at the Watanagashi this year. Who's going to be the Glizzy Goblin?
シロップはイチゴにメロンにブルーハワイがあるよ。おみくじたこ焼きいかがですか？当たりにはマスタードがげっしり。
There are a great many booths at this year's Watanagashi festival. Anything can become a festival if there are vendors selling food and music for bond dances, I thought. It's still June, but it had been extremely hot the past few days, almost as if it's already summer. When you have a June festival with bond dance music under this kind of weather, the only thing that's missing to make it a perfect summer festival is fireworks. Perspective shift? Yeah, okay. Did we just casually switch over to Oishi? Okay, so we might not be on the fun side of Watanagashi. I really thought we were going to get like a fun slice of life scene, but it seems like we might be Oishi and might be watching him as he like really gets into it, you know, like what's going on here. Interesting. I kind of like that more, but I didn't really expect it. And who knows if we're going to stay on Oishi. Maybe it's going to be a quick switch back, I don't know. I heard a voice coming from my portable radio. With this earphone, it looks like I'm secretly listening to the horse races while on duty.
はい、おいしいです。感度良好。その麦茶、勤務中に飲める麦茶？飲めない麦茶？
That's a good question. I think that answers it.
その麦茶、缶ならもらっといてください。コップなら自体でお願いします。はい、了解です。それと、紹介役員が挨拶に来てます。村長と、あと、園崎家の方からも。お寮のばあさま？やだな。大石は巡回中でいつ戻ってくるかわからないとか言ってごまかせません？あのばあさま、死ぬときは絶対脳梗塞ですね。
Well, not if Shion has anything to say about it.
了解了解。すぐに戻ると丁重にですよ。お伝えください。
Oh well, I guess I'll have to go back and mingle with the locals. All of a sudden, a group of kids came running towards me from behind. I wonder who those kids are. What? After a quick look at them, I noticed that they were the granddaughter of the old bag and her friends. They occupied a corner of the shooting gallery stall, making a lot of noise. Mion Sonozaki. When acting her age, she's a cute, normal girl. But I do ever hate when she acts like a member of the Sonozaki family. She'll be the boss of the Okunomiya Yakuza territory in 10 or 20 years, and just you wait and see. And while I was thinking things like that, I noticed that Mion wasn't the one taking leadership of her group this time. It was the boy. That boy. I know him. He just moved here recently. The boy from the Maibara mansion. Keiichi Maibara-kun, was it? I heard that the Maibara family is from the city, and they're supposedly very rich, too. But he doesn't flaunt his family's wealth. He has a good reputation because of that. Yeah, I don't think he knows his family is wealthy, if that is true, right? I think that either has not occurred to him, or he's been misled to believe that they have less than they do. I mean, you look at their house, and obviously you're like, they probably... Maybe not probably. There's a good chance they got money, right? But I think in Chapter 3 it was kind of briefly established that Keiichi didn't really seem to consider them like a money family, right? Like, he didn't seem to think they were rich or something, right? You certainly got to wonder what's their family history. I feel like that's going to come up, and I still want to throw this out there. It's pretty obvious, but like, it's a little meta too. But when you boot up this chapter, the icon is not Rena, right? Like, when you look at the you know, down at the bottom, right, on your taskbar, right, because I have it on my second monitor, right, I can see the taskbar icon. It's Keiichi, right? When you boot the game up, it shows Keiichi, right? Like, I expect that we're going to get a little bit of information about Keiichi in this chapter, and that could be potentially where it goes. Maybe some of his family history, or it's maybe going to be whatever seemed to be going on with his memories, either way. Even though he just moved here, he's already adjusted to his new school, and he's popular with his classmates, too. Everyone in the village seems to like him as well. He's very interesting to watch as a person of many moods. Boys of his age sure have a lot of energy. Ah, to be young again.
おい、次はレナだぜ。ここでレナはかなり美味しいタイミングだぜ。
大丈夫レナ？具合悪いんじゃないの？
ごめん。ちょっと射的は横で見てたいかな。なら、無理をしないで休んでいるといいのです。では、レナさんを飛ばして、ここでいよいよ真打ち。私の出番でございましてよ。
It looked like only 4 of them were having a good time. The girl called Rena seemed outside of that circle of smiles. I guess despite what happened, like, and everyone seeming to come together, maybe, I imagine she's not, like, fully over things. Her name is Rena Ryugu. What was her real name? I couldn't remember, but I can check when I get back to the station. Rena's only a nickname. I believe she moved here a year before my Barakun did. Her mother divorced her father, or something like that. She's a strong girl who does all the housework by herself. Rona knows a lot. She's a very modest girl, I'm told, which is rare in this era. Unlike my Barakun, it seemed like she hadn't really opened up to her friends just yet. They looked like a group of 5, but there's distance between her and the others. It's a little sad, you know. My Barakun has become a part of the village, but Rena is still by herself. Well, that's just how it looks to me.
おいし了解。地域のお祭りにまで挨拶に来るなんて、うちの所長は地域交流に豆だな。沖宮の祭りに来たって話は聞いたことないのに。ああ、こちら高杉です。大石さん聞こえますか？どうぞ。はいはい、大石です。ただいま全速力で帰還中ですよ。もう1分ほどお待ちを。
If I don't hurry up, even the chief might end up calling me. I ran back to the headquarters tent. I like this song. Okay. Another perspective shift? Or is Oishi watching this? No. Now we kind of look like we're following Tomatake. No. What? Okay, I don't know what all that was. Okay, might just be showing like a little time lapse of Watanagashi, Keiichi going home, and now there's a body. And I'm sure we can guess who this is.
ああ、どうもどうも。どうですか、入江の先生。
Oishi entered the cordoned off area. In there, people from forensics were taking pictures of the corpse from various angles. Irie was squatting down next to the dead body of Jiro Tomatake. When he stood up, he looked pale.
信じられません。
そりゃ私だって信じられませんよ。
Yeah, that would be a hard one to just see and like, you know, just be like, yes, why this is normal.
初見で見た限り、仏は喉をかきむしっています。
Just your everyday scenario, you know?
それも自分の手でです。こいつはまっとうな死に方じゃない。
No, I reckon it's not.
十中八九、何らかのヤバめな薬物でしょう。
It's a fair assumption, but I don't think that's correct.
彼は何らかの薬物の常習者だったということでしょうか？
No, really, that's actually kind of the opposite of what he's saying, I think, in a way.
さあね。
But he's not
そ
giving
い
us
つを調べ
information.
るのはどうやら我々の仕事になりそうです。
大石さん、この角材は？
多分仏が振り回したんじゃないかと思います。
So it seems like I'm starting to wonder if now we're going to jump over and kind of start to get some core answers about like some of the big mysteries, right? Like I literally, like, why did Tomitake die? What's going on with Takano, like, dying / disappearing, right? Answers to that could really help solidify any potential theories that I have, or they could really ruin them on the spot, and lead me to needing to form new ones.
で、途中で捨てて喉をかくのが楽しくなっちゃったんじゃないかと。
角材を何のために振り回したんでしょう。
自衛のためと考えるのが一番自然だと思います。仏の体に外傷がいくつかあるのに気づいてます？
ええ、打撲傷を思わせる跡がいくつか散見できます。
ってことは一番考えられるストーリーは、仏が祭り終了後沖宮へ帰る途中、ここで何者かに襲われた。それで取り押さえられて怪しげな注射とかそういうのをされて、その結果錯乱させられて死に至らしめられた。
You know, to be fair, that actually does not sound incorrect. For as much as I say, like, I don't think it's the drug, right? I don't think it's a murder drug. You can't really deny that in the last chapter, when Rika was administered that drug, she ripped her throat out, right? Or she was starting to claw her throat out. So I do wonder if that is like a side effect of being given that drug and not properly restrained, right? So maybe that is what it was, actually.
喉をかきむしるように誘導できる薬物なんて。
私もそっちは専門じゃありませんが、薬物中毒の一つに自傷行為ってあるらしいじゃないですか。まあその辺はうちの鑑識のじい様が調べてくれるでしょう。
おいさん、失礼します。ここから数百メートルのところに富武二郎のものと思われる自転車が見つかりました。
お、そうですか。ありがとうございます。何か手がかりとかは？
Anything interesting with the bike? I don't remember hearing anything about that.
いえ、初見では特には。今鑑識が言っています。
じゃあつまりその自転車があった場所が襲撃場所と考えていいんでしょうね。それで戦ったり逃げたりしてここまで来た。
Yeah, that makes sense. Uchi frowned, crossing his arms in front of his chest. Here he was looking at the miserable corpse of Tomitake, and he kept saying the same thing over and over.
ありえない。絶対にありえない。
Well, unfortunately, it is not. Well, I say unfortunately. I don't know if it's unfortunate.
ありえちゃったんだから仕方がないです。
Gotta really wonder how much more Irie knows than he's letting on. I think there's a good chance he knows more than he's letting on.
発想を柔軟にしましょう。まあ先生でもこんな死体はなかなか見慣れてるものじゃないか。先生はもう結構ですよ。お帰りになられて十分休んでください。救命活動でお呼びしたはずだったんですが、無駄足になってしまって申し訳ないです。
Oshi stuck his head out of the blue tent and asks, "Can anybody give him a ride home?" Irie gasped all of a sudden as he turned to Oishi. Did you realize something?
そうだ。高野さんはどうなったんです？
Yeah, that's the real question.
え？お宅の看護師さんの？
多分富武さんと一緒だったと思うんです。高野さんは無事なんですか？
先生、彼女の電話番号はわかります？
They try to contact her? That'd be interesting.
もちろんです。
熊ちゃん、入江の先生に電話番号を聞いて署から在宅確認を取らせてください。
了解っす。先生、番号。
はい。よろしいですか
Kumaga got the phone number from Irie, repeated it back, and then dashed away from the blue tarps.
先生、高野さんと仏は確か親しい仲でしたよ
Now
ね。
he's like, suddenly, maybe he does not need to go home. I need more information on the nature of their relationship.
何かトラブルがあったとか、そういうのは聞いたことがあります？
まさか聞いたことないです。仲のいい二人でした。
何事もなけりゃいいんですがね。下手すりゃ仏か、それとも星か。なるほど。看護師なら 怪しげな薬物を取り扱えてもおかしくはないですよね。
He's kind of jumping to assumptions now, which is...
そんな薬品は
Well,
うちの診療所にはありませんし、あったとしても厳重に保管されています。
I'd hope your clinic wouldn't have anything like that just sitting around.
高野さんに持ち出せるわけがない。
それでも一般人よりは容易でしょ。
ですからそもそもそんな薬物は聞いたことがないし、当診療所にも存在しません。
We know it's something that exists,
大
but
石さん、留守のようです。
where is it from?
署の待機組の方で直接訪問すると言ってます。先生、すみませんが高野さんの住所を教えてください。
熊ちゃん、それプラス県警に今夜出た身元不明の女性死体がないか確認を取ってください。あるいは県外の可能性もあるな。
Wise plan, Oishi.
課長に近県にも同様に身元不明の女性死体が出ていないか確認を取るよう伝えてください。
了解っす。
高野さんも殺されているということですか。
And it's possible.
さて、
Really, really, really interested to see
どうでしょうね。
if we learn anything about the police investigation into Takano. Because obviously, if you've watched my videos, you know by now that I really suspect that Takano is like, frankly, the big bad, right? I suspect that this is somehow a faked death, and I would love to see the grounds they have to truly believe it is 100% Takano that is dead, right? What is the information that shows that, right? That it was Takano in that burn barrel and not someone else. I'm really intrigued to see all of that. And anything we can get into Takano, right, could be very interesting, I think.
まだ外車とも星とも決まったわけじゃありません。もちろん無関係って可能性だって残ってます。明日は月曜だってのも構わず、その辺の飲み屋で飲んだくれてる可能性もありますからね。
信じられない。どうしてこんなことが。
まあ私だって信じられないです。
God, I hate how much I want to trust Irie, but it's so hard to trust him, man.
ひなみ沢村連続開始事件。これで5年目ですよ。親代様のたたりが5連続ってことになっちまいます。くそ。なんとか今年で尻尾を掴んでやりたいな。定年前にこの山だけはなんとか片付けたいんです。
Oshi hates the curse of Oyashiro-Sama. It had been leading him around by the nose for 5 consecutive years. Hold on. I don't know why this is like just now clicked in my head, but they're saying Oishi in the third person. Does that imply that this is, and they actually happen the whole time? Right? Like, no. No, they haven't been. It was only when this scene started. Oishi, okay. So this might actually be someone else's perspective. I don't know if I'm like kind of reaching here or if that's actually potentially relevant. But very clearly earlier in the chapter, we were using like first person pronouns, right? Oishi was saying I, right? But they're not doing that anymore. They're saying Oishi and like Irie in the third person, right? Right? Yeah, Irie as well. So who is this from the perspective of? Could that be relevant? I'm going to try to see if I can figure out anything about that. I might just be reaching, right? But I'm going to keep an eye out, see if there's anything that might suggest who this is from the perspective of. The victim of the first year, the manager of the damn construction site, was his friend. Despite his desire to avenge his friend, the mystery had only deepened, and one case followed another year after year. Oishi would be retiring next March. As a retiree, he'd be able to ask about the progress of the investigation, but he wouldn't be able to take the initiative anymore. In other words, this year was his last chance for revenge. Would he have to put his head in the lion's mouth to capture the culprit? Oishi quietly clenched his fist. I believe that this maze has an exit. Maze is a very convenient word. A maze always has an exit. You don't call it a maze if it doesn't have one. I know I'm on the right path towards the exit of this maze. I used to miss these minor divergences, but now I don't miss anything. I don't make any mistakes. Minor divergences. This time I could feel a response that was different than all the other times. I'm sure I can finally get to the exit of this maze. But no matter which path I choose to come to this point, Jiro Tomitake always dies. So, is this Rena? Not Rena, Rika. Sorry. It kind of sounded like I freaked out about that. I was just rewatching the last video, and I mixed up Rena and Rika's names in that one, too, the other way. So now I'm like, oh my goodness. All right, let's go on, though. Sorry. Okay, where are we now? Okay, we're going to the next day. I didn't think that would be the end of that whole scene. Right as this one starts, we're going to scroll back up. Look at some of that text. Okay, we're going to the next evening. Wow. Okay, next night. We're just going to keep going. So it's what? It's been over 24 hours at this point. A little over 24 hours. And we are back at school. Okay. So that was definitely not from the perspective of Oishi, to be clear. But what I want to look at is just this little sequence right here. Oishi hates the curse of Oyashiro-Sama and had been leading him around by the nose for 5 consecutive years. The victim of the first year was his friend. The mystery had only deepened. Only one case followed after another. He'd be retiring in March. Couldn't continue. Last chance of revenge. He quietly clenched his fist. I believe that this maze has an exit. Maze is a very convenient word. A maze always has an exit. Don't call it a maze if it doesn't have one. I know I'm on the right path towards the exit of this maze. I used to miss these minor divergences, but now I don't miss anything. I don't make any mistakes. This time I could feel a response that was different than all the other times. I'm sure I can finally get to the exit of this maze, but no matter which path I choose to come to this point, Jiro Tomitake always dies. So to me, this reads like this is Rena somehow overlooking that whole conversation? How? I don't know. I really don't know how that is possible. Did I say Rena again? Rika Furude. Rika Furude is who I meant. Anyways, I think this is Rika maybe somehow observing this conversation. I mean, maybe she was just there and there's nothing weird about it. But all of this, right, the whole, like, this is a maze, right? I believe I'm getting close to the way out. I'm I used to miss minor divergences, like where things would change just a little bit and then have some big sweeping impact. But now she doesn't miss those things. She notices them. She doesn't make mistakes. I don't know if that's completely true. They feel something different this time. They think they can get out. But no matter what, Tomitake always dies. So it seems like that's like the big constant. It's Tomitake dying. Rip bro, I guess. That was interesting. Like I said, I really want to know how Rena observed that. I mean, was she literally just there? Was she allowed to be there as the, like, Furude heir, maybe? I don't know. I can't help but think back to, like, last chapter. That whole general idea that it feels like a presence is following someone, right? right? And specifically, I'm thinking about Shion, how she felt like there was a presence following her, and the sound, right, that it was making that banging sound, that it was like maybe trying to warn her of something. And it kind of seemed like Rika had information that you wouldn't really expect that she could have in that spot. There's really a part of me that is like, I don't know, like this. I really don't want to push this theory too hard because it just sounds way too ridiculous to me. But just like almost some form of like borderline astral projection. Like that's what it could make sense. Do I think that's what it is? Probably not. It could be, but think about it. It would kind of make sense. It would explain how Rena could, Rika, how Rika could be there and not be there at the same time. But we don't know that she wasn't there. She could have just been there. But in the scenario that she's gathering information while not even in a place, I don't know how else to really explain it. Unless she's just stealthy, I guess. But it doesn't really make sense to me. I'm like, that presence, it feels like it's like a literal presence, right? I'm starting to wonder if that's somehow the case, right? Somehow we're separating mind from body. It just sounds so ridiculous that I don't want to push that too hard, but like I'm like, it could kind of make sense to me, you know? It could kind of make sense. Especially because they kind of implied that the presence was Rika too. That's the big thing, right? When Rika was following Shion last chapter, they described it in a way that it was like the footsteps perfectly mirrored mine, like those footsteps that people here always do. But when she stopped, there was one more, right? One more set, right? I'm like, it's the exact same mannerism, and it feels like that's not unintentional, right? And it could just be a red herring, right? But I'm like, I almost wonder if that's what's going on. Somehow that presence is Rika, and maybe she can use it to gather info from a distance. I don't know. Like, really, I don't have anything else to say on that. Nothing else to add there. It's just something I'm really wondering. It feels really hard to push that theory, but I'm like, I think it would make sense. Like, I do think it makes sense. It's just like, what would allow this? How can we really push this? Right? Like, is there real evidence for this, or does it just kind of like, would it explain things? Right? Those are two different things, right? There's a lot of ways you can try to explain away certain things, but does that mean it's the correct answer? No, not necessarily. So let's get into this. Back to the school. It seems we're not going to be following Rena right now. Rena had been sick ever since that day, and she hadn't been able to join in on club activities as often since. We're following Keiichi now.
まだちょっと風邪っぽいの。そうでございますの。
Wait. You feel what? We're feeling feverish? Are we dealing with a onset of Hinamizawa syndrome? That's what I'm wondering.
それは残念ですわね。
なあレナ、たまにはパーッとはしゃいでみないか。多分元気に遊べば吹っ飛ばせると思うんだよ俺は。
うんうん、そうだね。それはおじさんも同感だね。
そうかな。かな。
I mean, maybe.
横になっている方がかえって毒になることもありますです。
True.
そうですわよね。病は気からとも言いますですわ。
Okay, that's false. Everybody has suspected for a while that Rena isn't really sick, at least physically. It's just that many things happened to her at once. She caught a mental cold. That's why I thought she would get better once she played with us, just like we used to. It seemed like Rena was aware of that too. She knew that she had to get out of her state of depression soon. She wanted to get better, and she wanted to have fun again every day.
よし、
Alright, we'll
私
take
も参
it.
加する。
Maybe it'll help her. I could see it.
オッケー。そう来なくちゃね。
I have a feeling this is
じゃあ今日は
gonna go...
レナの病み上がりも少し加味してテーブルゲームから種目をチョイスしよ
I just have a bad feeling about this scene, to be honest.
う。何がいいかな、何がいいかな。
Mion started rummaging through her locker, humming to herself. She took one game after another from the locker and put them aside. The locker definitely didn't obey the laws of physics. The amount of games she took out from the locker was more than what it could physically hold.
お、こんなのもあったね。久しぶりにやってみようか。今日は本格派推理ゲームでいこう。
ほう、なんだよそれ。面白そうだな。
犯人と凶器、犯行現場の3つを当てるゲームなの。
Man, are we serious? You picked Clue? When you're trying... Oh my... Y'all are trying to get her mind off of things. Oh, that might have been the worst pick. Oh my goodness. What are we doing here?
結構頭を使うんだよ。
I get the logic, but...
一度やればすぐに覚えてしまいます。
That... I don't know. Maybe Rena won't take well to this.
ちゃんとメモに整理していけば大丈夫なのです。情報の整理にはちょっとしたコツがありますのよ。素敵な私の最も得意とするジャンルでございますわね。
I do want to say the last time they played Clue like this is when Keiichi got called for an for the interrogation kind of with Oishi, right? I wonder if that's where we're going again. The rules don't seem that difficult. In short, it's a game where you sound out the cards each player holds in order to try and reason out the identity of the cards first drawn out of the deck. There are plenty of games in different formats where you try to identify something hidden in the least number of steps. This one just happens to be a competitive one of those. The key to winning this game would be how well you can organize your information. We usually like to play athletic games so that we can run around a lot, but in our club you have to excel both academically and athletically.
よしよしよし、なんだか面白くなってきやがった。やろうぜやろうぜ。レナ、今日こそ曖昧になってるあの水鉄砲勝負の時の白黒をつけてやる。
そうだね。よーし、レナも本気で行くからね。レナが本気なら僕も本気を出さないといけませんです。
Okay, I guess Rena doesn't seem bothered by the fact that we picked a game about murder. Just, given the situation, I was like, maybe that was insensitive.
ですわね。あの水鉄砲の一件以来、ケイチさんとレナさんの評価を改めましてよ。容赦なく行かせていただきますわ。
When they're locked in, they can cook.
よしよし、盛り上がってきたね。おじさんもこういう暑さを期待してたんだよ。よし、行ってみよ
よし行くぜ。俺がナイフで書斎はどうだ。
あるよ。レナはね、ケイチくん毒薬で玄関ホールだよ。私はこれですわね。ミオン、ピストル、ラウンジです
う。ピストルはあんたが持ってるんでしょ。下手なフェイクは意味ないよ。
犯人と凶器は特定できたと思います。
I'm looking at these for any subtle foreshadowing.
犯行現場が二択なのです。
Or references.
はあ、リカちゃんも？私は犯人が二択で特定できない。コツは相手の質問内容からも何かのヒントを得ることですのよ。それが分かれば時には相手の手札で答えが分かることもありましたよ。
なるほどな。くそ、甘く見てたか。やべえ、メモがぐちゃぐちゃで意味が分からなくなった。
Well, that's a problem. You're cooked, buddy. Random guessing it is for you.
メモに書き取るコツが分かればこのゲームは7割方攻略したも同然だね。ま、7割程度じゃおじさんには勝てないけどさ。
I kind of knew I didn't stand a chance of winning this game, but I gradually started picking it up. Rena seemed to be getting her energy back as she played along. It was the right decision to force her to play with us today. While we were in the middle of the game, Chie-sensei came into the classroom.
楽しそうですね。ところで竜宮さんはいますか？
Is Oishi gonna want to talk to Rena this time?
は
I guess she's the one isolated from the group this time.
竜宮さんにお客様が来ています。
Everybody looked puzzled. Parents sometimes showed up at school for some reason, but Chie-sensei never called them visitors. It's rare to have a visitor at school.
なんだろう。
Definitely not a police officer.
ちょっと行ってくるね。 みんなは部活続けててね。
Rena left the classroom at a run.
どうする？待ってるか？
どれだけかかる用事かわからないからね。レナもああ言ってたことだし、私たちは続けようか。
ああ
Are we not gonna get to see that? Oh, that sucks. If we don't. Come on. Please switch to Rena's perspective. Okay, yeah. I was like, if we don't get to see this, bro, that would be so tragic. Right? That'd be so tragic. I want any information I can glean at this point in the game. Around the entrance, the glaring sun and the cool shade made for a clear contrast. An old man who's holding his jacket on his arm was waiting for me. He looked like he was overheating and his tie was limp.
リュウグウさんですか。リュウグウレイナさん。
Ever since Rena called me Rena, I've hated that name more than ever. Because of that, I didn't have a good first impression of this man.
そうですよ。どちら様ですか？
私の車はエアコンが効いてますから、そっちでお話ししましょう。ここ暑くありません？
He ignored my question and started walking towards the car parked in front of the school gate. If he wanted to talk about something normal, he would have used the teacher's office. But he wanted to talk in his car instead. I couldn't help but feel suspicious. Chie-sensei let him see me, though. It meant he wasn't a suspicious individual as far as she was concerned. Who was he?
取って食いやしません。どうぞどうぞ。
He called out to me while opening the rear door. Is he a policeman? Did the police find out that I killed those two? I felt anxious all of a sudden. Is this what they called a voluntary interview? I didn't want to go in that car, but if I rejected his offer, it'd only make me look suspicious. See, I don't think he's on your tail literally at all. Right? Literally at all, but your anxiety about that situation is certainly not going to help matters here. I prepared myself and got in. It was really cool inside the car. A car AC must cost a fortune. At least my father's car doesn't have one.
冷えすぎだったら言ってくださいよ。私ガンガンに冷やしちゃうたちですから。
で、私に何の用ですか？
In retaliation, I ignored his question and got to the point like he did. He pulled a small notebook out of his breast pocket and flipped through it. He picked out a photo from it. The photo showed the face of a goofy-looking man.
この男性のことでご存知のことがあったら教えてください。
The man in the picture was expressionless and looked half asleep. Sometimes you can't even recognize your own family members in a photo where they don't have an expression. There's no way I would recognize a person who wasn't related to me. But anyway, that was a bit of a relief. It had nothing to do with Rena or her partner.
シャツにマジックで落書きがありましてね。リュウグウさんをはじめクラスメート何人かの署名入りでした。
これ、富武さん？
I don't feel his usual carefree unreliableness from this picture at all. From this half-awake, emotionless face.
では、こちらの女性はわかりますか？
I knew what he was going to show.
ミオさんです。高野ミオさん。
二人に最後に会ったのはいつですか？
綿流しの祭りのお開きになった直後くらいにあったと思います。
何か気になったこととかありませんか？何でも結構です。話してください。
富武さんたちに何かあったんですか？
Yeah. Okay, so we're skipping back. I guess maybe they're not going to give me that exact same monologue for like the 5th time.
取った！実はよ、レナとミオンで二択だったんだよな。
じゃあ、博打だったんですの？なんてリスクのあることを。それでも、勝ちは勝ちなのですよ。
Yeah, I guess.
お、レナだ。おかえり。ずいぶん時間かかったね。
Mio noticed that Rena had returned. She looked exhausted. I had no idea what she talked about with the visitor, but it was obvious it wasn't something fun.
レナ、大丈夫？
何大丈夫って。
いや、顔色だよ。青いというか、白いというか。本当に大丈夫？
Rena tried to convince us she was fine, but her face clouded over for a moment and she decided to leave early. I shouldn't have forced her to join the game. I mean, that had nothing to do with, any problem she has right now, but I was regretting it a little. Rena probably forced herself to play with us, even though she wasn't feeling well at all. Rena put her stuff in her bag, apologized to us for leaving early, and left the classroom. So now we're getting...
仕方ありませんわね。
Now we're getting Chapter 1 parallels. That's interesting. I wonder if that's what's going to happen. This is going to be like an accidental retread of Chapter 1, but with Rena being in Keiichi's spot.
では、せめて私たちの白黒ははっきりさせようじゃございませんの。
そうだね。次は誰の番だっけ？
よっしゃリカちゃん来やがれ。
Interesting. So she talked with Oishi. I don't know why it took me so many tries to remember his name. She talked with Oishi in that car about Tomatake and Takano. And we're going to talk about, obviously, we're going to get some of that information here. So I guess I don't need to be like, I wonder what they talked about. But it didn't sit right with her, is the big thing. And like I said, that does kind of really remind me of Chapter 1. Let's just kind of go on. We're going to presumably get some information about that conversation. First of all, I wasn't very close to Mio-san. I knew who she was, so I greeted her whenever we happened to pass by. But that was about it. I never really talked to her except for the one time. And that time was only recently. It was between the day of the Watanagashi festival and the day I was caught in the act of burying the 2 corpses by Keiichi-kun and my other friends. That's an interesting timing for that, given that it seems like you're developing symptoms of Hinamizawa syndrome / craziness / whatever. And I've suspected that somehow these conversations are kind of prompting that, right? Like conversations with Takano. I'm just saying, that's some interesting timing. I had a phone call from the library that evening. I was told that my father needed to return the book he borrowed. He was shopping at the home improvement store at the time, so I went to the library to return the book for him. Okay, now we're kind of mirroring, chapter... No, well, we're not really mirroring Chapter 2. Never mind. I was going to say, like, this scenario happened in Chapter 2, but it didn't lead to a conversation with Takano. While I was there, I thought about borrowing some books for myself, and I started walking around the library. I saw her there.
あら、レナちゃんじゃないかしら。こんにちは。
ミオさん、どうもこんにちは。図書館で会うなんて珍しいですね。
そう？私にとってみれば、あなたが図書館にいることの方が珍しいんだけどね。
She smiled in the very attractive and charming way that only mature women can do. Her smile gave no indication that she knew her death was just a few days away. She said that she often met with Tomatake-san at the library. It seemed like she had some time to kill, so she told me she wanted to buy me a drink. I had nothing to do after that. I let her buy me a canned iced milk tea from the vending machine in the library, and we talked for a while. Once I came to think about it, it was a little ironic. She mostly talked about the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. She had no idea that she was going to be the victim of its 5th year.
連続開始事件ですか？
あら、聞いたことくらいあるでしょ？
Of course she has.
4年前にはダムの現場監督、3年前には北条夫妻、2年前には古出夫妻、そして去年は聡子ちゃんのおばが犠牲になったhinamizawa村連続開始事件よ。それがあと何日かで5年目を迎えるじゃない？
Yeah, well, she figured that much.
一応私もそういう物騒な名前で呼ばれていることは知ってますけど、でも5年目も起こると決まったわけじゃ。
Valid point. You're wrong, but valid point.
起こるわよ。絶対にね。2度あることは3度あるってことわざがあるけど、4度あることは5度あるって方がもっと確率は高いとは思わない？
I suppose that's a fair assumption. To be completely honest, that is a fair assumption. Mio-san was convinced that the fifth mysterious death was going to happen, but she didn't know she was going to be the fifth victim. That's ironic, and also really creepy. But there was always something creepy about her. So maybe she knew that she was going to be killed in a few days, but still managed to make that mysterious smile. Dude, I could see that. Right? Even if we assume she's actually dead and it was not her behind her death, I could see her having an idea that it was her and just being like, oh well. The series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. Of course I know about it. I've lived here for more than a year. Every year on the day of the Watanagashi festival, one traitor to the village dies mysteriously. It's been that way since the dam conflict. Each case was solved individually, but mysterious incidents still happen every year. It makes me wonder if there's some kind of will to all this. The creepiness and incomprehensibility of it all gave rise to the name The Curse of Oyashiro-Sama, which fit perfectly. Despite this, I always thought The Curse of Oyashiro-Sama was just a series of coincidences. You always thought that? See, because that's interesting. Because no, you didn't. No, you did not. My reason for that is because I strongly believe that Satoshi-kun was the one who murdered his aunt in the 4th year. I don't have any evidence, but I just know it. I know that Satoshi-kun was in a serious predicament last year and that he had nowhere to turn. He had no one to help him, but he had to save Satoko-chan as soon as he could. Satoshi-kun thought it through and made the best choice he could to handle the situation, just like I did when I had my problem with Rena. I hesitated to inform Mio-san that Satoshi-kun was the murderer on the 4th year, so I just listened to her for a while. According to her theory, the series of the mysterious deaths isn't just a set of coincidences, but is instead a series of interrelated murder cases. At that point, my theory was completely the opposite of hers, but I decided not to cut in.
ひなみ沢のお社様信仰は知ってるわよね。
Suddenly, Rena being the one who doesn't believe things are connected is kind of funny, right? Especially given the bus stop scene, right? That's the big thing. I look at that and I'm like, and you're trying to tell me, right? You're trying to tell me that Rena does not believe they're connected at all, and that it's not necessarily a curse, or I don't know. Like, I guess you could still believe it's a curse and not necessarily think each one is connected, right? But like, I don't know. I never really got the vibe that she didn't believe that they were connected. Maybe I would really need to see how she felt about it in the past again. Maybe like I need to rewatch the bus stop scene, but right, we know about the cult, or like vaguely. Takano-san started telling me that Hinamizawa was once called Onigafuchi, classic. She also explained the story of how the villagers were in the old days, showing me the scrapbook she was so proud of. The villagers back then were called man-eating demons, but they were also admired as transcendents, enlightened people not bound by earthly desires. I'm glad we're not going through this whole thing again, we're just getting a summary.
つまりミオさんの説によるならば、連続開始事件はお社様を崇拝する狂信的団体がひなみ沢に潜んでいて、お社様の力を世に示そうとしているということなんですか？
狂信的というか原理主義的というかは紙一重だけどね。明治以降、村の名前がひなみ沢に変わって以来、鬼ヶ淵村が長く続けてきたさまざまな風習が途絶えている。
Right.
それをよみがえらせ、再び鬼ヶ淵村の名と威風を取り戻そうと思っている人たちがいるんじゃないかしら。
You. Mio-san's theory was more than a little crazy, but it was also fascinating. At first, her theory had sounded like she was just jumping to conclusions, but after she eagerly showed me the documents she'd been studying, I started to think that it actually wasn't too far from the truth. If her theory was true, it would mean that the accidental deaths of the Hojo couple in the 2nd year, the suicide and the death by disease of the Furude couple in the 3rd year, and the drug addict murderer in the 4th year were all cooked up. It means someone who has a lot of power and influence over the police was involved. Very true, but... I guess I don't know why that's not really... Why had I not really seriously considered the possibility of the second, like the Hojos, being just some kind of cover up, right? Like, if I knew the. If I obviously knew that the. For a while now, I've known that Satoshi's was a cover up. I felt very strongly about that, at least. I've felt there's a decent chance the suicide and death by disease for the Furudes. I'm like, that could easily be a cover up for a murder. But not once did I consider this one. I gotta be crazy, because for some reason I felt like Satoko witnessed it. Right? Like, she witnessed them fall. I mean, I guess that still could have been, like it being an accident could have been the cover up, potentially, I guess. And maybe I'm just wrong about Satoko witnessing that, but I thought they were on like a family trip. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And if I'm wrong about that, obviously it's a lot more likely that got covered up. And that's very interesting. It's easier to suspect, yes, someone who has a lot of power over the police. When I pointed that out, Mio-san nodded in agreement, and she started talking about how strongly they were rooted in the village and how deeply they were involved with many public organizations. After she finished explaining all that, I finally noticed that Mio-san was suggesting that the three families, including the Sonozaki family, were the masterminds behind the murder incidents. In fact, the Sonozaki family really is very powerful. They hold influence not only over Hinamizawa and Okinomiya, but also over the entire Shishibone area. It might not be wrong to say that they even hold influence over the entire prefecture. If the Sonozaki family is behind all of this, her theory would be more realistic. But it means I should be suspicious of Michan. No, I shouldn't. But in fact, Michan was very cold and unkind to Satoshi-kun when he was going through a tough time. I know there was conflict between the Sonozaki family and the Hojo family during the Dam Wars, but still, she was very cold to Satoshi-kun. But Michan admitted that what she did was wrong, and I forgave her too. I didn't want to think about that again. I decided to change the subject because I knew it would make me feel uncomfortable if we kept talking about the Sonozaki family.
そもそもお社様信仰って一体何なんでしょうね。
Look, the seeds of doubt may have been sown, right? And that might explain if I think that she might be developing Hinamizawa syndrome, which is, I've just kind of taken to calling it Hinamizawa syndrome because the more I have thought about it, the more I'm like, that's probably just what it is, right? The symptoms were too close to what we saw at the end of Chapter 3 for me to not want to use the name they have. If I'm wrong, I guess I should have been using Hinamizawa craziness the whole time to explain it, but, point is, I've kind of seen it as like what maybe really starts it is like some strong negative feeling, potentially of like some big event and then like these negative feelings, right? And in this case, if she's feeling doubt regarding her own friend group, that could potentially be something that jumpstarts it, right? And so this conversation happening when it does, her kind of being like, it might be like her implying it might be the Sonozakis, Rena being like, do I need to suspect Mion? Right? And being like, no, wait, right? It like I said, it could do it. And maybe we really are going that chapter 1 route where maybe she has this doubt, and then maybe Oishi shares his theories, like your friends might be involved. And now she really doesn't, like, she's worried to be like interacting with them, especially Mion. I'm really wondering if we're about to get the reverse chapter 1. That'd be interesting.
鬼と人が共存というのも面白い話です。普通の昔話だったら鬼が来たら退治してやっつけるという風なのに。
そうね。そのあたりがお社様信仰の面白いところね。でもそもそも神の国から神が漂着してきて崇められるというのは決して珍しいことではないのよ。
Right.
漂着神崇拝って言ってね、世界中に海の向こうからあるいは川上から神が漂着してきて それを人々が敬ったという類の神話が残されているわ。
Right.
それは偉人漂着の話でしょうか？
そういう捉え方も一般的ね。古代日本は大陸に比べると様々な文化が遅れていた。だから進んだ文化を持った異国人が漂着した結果、その知識を敬い神と祀ったというのはありえなくもない話よね。
そういえば日本に伝わる赤鬼や青鬼もナンパして漂着した異国人のことを指すのではないかという説がありましたね。天狗のいわゆる真っ赤で鼻が異様に高い顔も欧米人を見慣れない古代の人々が作り上げたのかもしれないし。
あら、レナちゃんもなかなか鋭い見方ができるわね。
Right. We've kind of gotten these implications that Oyashiro-Sama could have just been a foreigner, right? Which is still interesting. Not 100% sure if it's true, but it's interesting nonetheless.
それには私も同感よ。大方の漂着神信仰の原点は私も偉人漂着にあると思うわ。でもそうだとすると鬼ヶ淵村の
Okay.
鬼が現れたとする漂着
Okay, 'cause
神
that's what I was
信
gonna
仰には
say.
ちょっと不思議な点がある。
It didn't seem like we really believed that for Oyashiro-Sama, even if it could generally be true.
わかるかしら？
わからないです。
簡単よ。鬼ヶ淵村には海がない。
あ、確かに。
偉人漂着なら外の世界とつながる接点が欠かせないはずよ。
Yeah, I guess a place like Hinamizawa/Onikafuchi Village isn't likely to have those interactions.
欧米なら異国に通じる川、日本なら世界に接する海。だから日本における漂着神崇拝もそのほとんどは沿岸部に集中するわね。
鬼ヶ淵村以外に漂着し、そこから旅をしてここまでやってきた可能性はありませんか？
ところがお社様信仰の決定的なところは
It says they came from the swamp.
鬼が漂着した場所を鬼ヶ淵沼とはっきり特定している点なの。鬼ヶ淵沼には何も流れ着かない。そんなところになぜどこから漂着したのか。実はこの辺にお社様信仰の謎を探る面白さがあるのよ。
That's a fair point.
お社様の伝説はどの程度知ってるかしら？
学校に置いてある絵本で読んだ程度です。
I feel like I know a lot about it, but I actually don't. I just have an extreme fear of the rule not to leave Hinamizawa. After all, my life went wrong after I left. I felt dizzy when I tried to think about it further, so I stopped. Okay, so going back to her presumably having some of her memories like blocked. It's always interesting, this background right here, because I always feel like this is usually indicative of like something related to what is making people go crazy, right? Like that Hinamizawa syndrome kind of at some point, right? I feel like this is like usually this background is indicative of that. When everything went wrong in Ibaraki, I met Oyashiro-Sama, and he told me to go back to Hinamizawa. No. I'll get dizzy. Don't try to remember. Don't try to remember. I can't remember. I got desperate because I felt responsible for the divorce. I just used Oyashiro-Sama as an excuse for my mental instability, and I told my father I wanted to go back to Hinamizawa. Right? But wait. Oyashiro-Sama did come to me. Oh no, the colors are too dazzling. I can only remember the vivid colors of the pills and the dizziness.
それだけ知ってれば十分よ。
Bro, we missed the whole speech.
鬼ヶ淵より鬼が湧き出し、それを見かねたお社様が降臨して鬼たちを平服させたわ。鬼たちは地獄を追放され、行き場がないことを嘆き、それで村人たちは鬼たちを気の毒に思って村に住まわせてあげようと決めた。
Okay.
そしてお社様は村人たちの心に感銘を受け、 鬼たちに人の姿を与え、村に共存させたという。その血は次第に交わり、村人たちに溶け込んでいった。
そうです。そういう話だったと思います。
Right. I felt dizzy, like I was going to faint, because I touched the one memory I didn't want to.
神話の多くは古代の何らかの事実を原型にしていると言われることが多いんだけど、
I feel like them bringing that up means like there is something relevant to the lore.
レナちゃんはこの神話から何を読み取れるかしら？
Because I was still feeling dizzy, all I could do was tilt my head quizzically. It seemed like Mio-san was expecting that response, because she smiled, looking satisfied that she successfully made me confused. She took a scrapbook out of her paper bag.
これ、レナちゃんに貸してあげるわ。
ありがとうございます。でも私、
いいのよ。暇な夜長にでも思い出したら読んでくれれば結構。レナちゃんは鋭いところがあるみたいだから、それを読んだ上で、
The
今度じっ
same
くり議論を
exact,
交わしたいわね。
same exact song and dance we saw with Shion last year.
私も肯定的であれ敵対的であれ議論の相手がいなくて寂しいのよ。二郎さん、こういうのにはさっぱり興味のない人だし。
I had little choice but to take the scrapbook. Apparently Mio-san came to the library often, so I figured I could return it to her whenever I came to return my books. However, the day I'd returned the scrapbook to Mio-san never came.
どうしたの？さっきからうつろね。体調悪いの？
あ、ちょっと夏風邪気味で、まだ病み上がりなんです。
It wasn't the summer cold that was making me feel dizzy. I always get dizzy when I try to remember the time I met Oyashiro-Sama in Ibaraki. I mustered all my courage and asked her. My memories of those days in Ibaraki is blurry. I know I met Oyashiro-Sama. Nobody believed me, and they told me that it was a hallucination. I thought Mio-san would listen to me.
ミオさん、
I'm really curious what they're gonna have to say about this.
今度は私の話を聞いてもらってもいいですか？
いいわよ。聞いてもらったお返しに今度は私が聞くわ。
いえ、お社様の話なんです。笑われないかとても不安です。
笑わないわよ。あなたも私の話を笑わなかったもの。
Mio-san said it in a very gentle and mature way, and then encouraged me. Even so, I still hesitated to talk. There was probably nobody but Mio-san with whom I could talk about something like this. I gathered my courage again and spoke.
私、お社様に会ったことがあるんです。
本当に？
はい。私、小学校に上がる前までは、ひなみ沢に住んでいたんです。それが、母の仕事の関係で、茨城に引っ越したんです。この意味はわかりますよね。
わかるわよ。南沢を離れてはならないというお社様の禁忌に触れたということね。
そうです。それで、いろいろ悪いことが起こって、母が離婚し、家庭はぐちゃぐちゃになりました。私も自暴自棄になって悪いことをしたりしました。
辛いこともあったのね。それで？
世の中の何もかもが嫌になって、自分以外の幸せな人たち全部が私を見下しているように感じた最後の頃、不思議な存在が現れるようになったんです。
それがお社様？
初めて現れたのは、内緒ですよ。
I did some bad things is a strong way to put it, or a light way to put it, frankly, is more what I meant.
全部嫌になって自分を壊してしまいたいと思って、体に刃物を突きつけたことがあったんです。
Did we know about that? Was there any indication that she had done this? Damn. For some reason, I don't remember this being something that I had remembered or thought of her doing, but As terrible as it is, I suppose given the situation, it's not terribly surprising.
その時首をカミソリで切りつけたら血に混じってブクブクと汚らしい何かが溢れ出したんです。
I'm sorry, you cut what?
それは、
Okay, so that's crazy. Did she try to commit suicide? I guess given the context, that's not that crazy, but Jesus, man. Wait, what?
バカにしないわよ。続けて。
The chill I felt at that time came back to me. I sealed that memory away so that I wouldn't have to remember ever again. But once I unsealed it, I started remembering things one after another. Yes, back then there was something in the blood. Something crawling.
赤黒い無数のウジ虫だったんです。それらは首から血がこぼれるのと一緒にわらわらと湧き出してきました。しかもそいつらは外へ溢れまいと傷口から再び中へ戻っていこうとわらわらうごめいていたんです。私そんな気持ち悪いのに体内に戻られたくなくって書きました。首の傷をひっかいてはほじくり出そうとしました。でもそれ以上は痛くて血まみれになるばかりで。
Interesting. Well, this obviously looks pretty familiar. I'm gonna let this play out.
それで私は急に怖くなりました。私の体の中には血管いっぱいにあの気持ち悪いウジ虫がぎっしり詰まっているんじゃないかって。それで私は試しにカミソリでももの血管を開いてみました。そこならよく見えると思ったから。そしたら
No? Oh, everywhere.
溢れてきたんです。ドバッとわらわらっと。
I understand, Ryugu-san, so please calm down.
分かってないってば。そのウジ虫たちは血と一緒にドバッと溢れ出すけどすぐに元の血管の中に戻ろうとする。それがとてもかゆいんです。
Please bring a doctor. No, no, no. Don't claw at it like that. Bring me a sedative. Hurry. Hold her down.
私の血管の中のウジ虫をやっつけて血を全部抜いてきれいにして。私の血管にはウジ虫がいっぱい詰まってるの。どうして信じないの？見せてあげるから見れば信じるでしょ。もう注射は嫌。いやいやいやいや。
Jesus. I guess there's a reason that these memories were not being remembered.
落ち着いて。
Takano being the reasonable one in this situation is certainly something, but interesting. So, if this is true, parasite theory really seems to be on the menu. But it's hard to know if she was just being, like, I guess hysterical, or if when she cut herself, if these maggots were real, right? Interesting. We're gonna keep going just for now. Mio-san sat next to me and held my hands tightly. Her touch brought me back to reality.
それでどうしたの？
そんな誰も私のことを信じてくれない時に親代様が。
The memory was very vague, and I saw flickering lights. It made it difficult for me to remember. I met Oyashiro-Sama. That sentence is all I remembered. The memory of actually meeting Oyashiro-Sama was unbelievably vague. After I got out of the hospital, I continued being treated at home. I still felt something moving in my veins, so I wanted to cut my body to make that blood ooze out so that I could make sure that there were no maggots in there. Usually I was sleeping like the dead because of the strong pills I was taking. But one day I forgot to take the pill, and my consciousness was very clear. I felt the maggots moving in my veins, and I felt the urge to look inside. I cut a vein on my wrist. I knew it. A lot of blood and many dusky red maggots came out from the wound. I wanted to wash them off before they crawled back inside me, so I put my wrist under running water in the bathroom sink and I tried to open the vein. Jesus. Man, that's just horrifying. Water, blood, and maggots ran down into the drain. Just like squeezing out the pus from a pimple. I squeezed the vein to get rid of the dirty blood and maggots. I kept doing it. My arm started to feel numb and I felt cold, but I kept doing it. I thought I might die from losing too much blood, but I kept doing it. My body was filled with maggots. I had to squeeze all my blood out of me. And then, a very bright light shone upon me. It was a very bizarre sensation. I never experienced anything like it in my life. All of a sudden, the dark bathroom was filled with a bright light. It was very bright but gentle. It wasn't like the light from the merciless fluorescent bulb. It was very warm and gentle. That was Oyashiro-Sama. Oyashiro-Sama was looking at me with gentleness and sadness in his eyes. As he touched my wound, the maggots started melting and disappeared in front of my eyes. That wasn't all. All the maggots that were moving through all my veins disappeared too. Oyashiro-Sama taught me. These maggots were the curse. People of the demon's blood can't live outside of Hinamizawa. It's the rule. Unfortunately, you've been cursed. It's very sad, and I feel sorry for you. There's only one way to save you. That's what he said. What should I do? The answer was very simple. All I needed to do was to go back to Hinamizawa. I unconsciously knew that before I heard it from Oyashiro-Sama. People who were born in Hinamizawa must never leave. But I broke Oyashiro-Sama's rules and I left Hinamizawa. So my family was broken and I lost my mind. If I hadn't left Hinamizawa, nothing would have gone wrong. And so I had to go back. Oyashiro-Sama also told me this. He could make the maggots, the embodiment of the curse, disappear, but only temporarily, because I lived far from Hinamizawa. After a while, the power of Oyashiro-Sama would fade away, and the curse would start eating my body again. If that happened, the maggots would take over my body, and I would go insane and die. Well, I don't know. I don't know who she's communing with here, but that part's relatively accurate. I must go back to Hinamizawa before his power to hold down the curse faded away. That's what Oyashiro-Sama told me. He did. I heard him tell me that. I should have gone back to Hinamizawa earlier. That's why Oyashiro-Sama came to me to put his curse on me. But he gave me a chance. He gave me a chance to pay for my sin of leaving Hinamizawa. Dad, listen. Oyashiro-Sama is going to help us. Let's go back to Hinamizawa. Hinamizawa is the place where we must live. If we don't, not only me, but you might be cursed too. Let's go back to Hinamizawa. That's the only place where we can live. We need to hurry. We need to hurry, or Oyashiro-Sama's power will fade away and my body will be eaten by the maggots. Oh no. Oyashiro-Sama is following me. He's telling me to hurry. He follows me everywhere and keeps telling me to hurry. He keeps apologizing to me for putting his curse on me. We've seen that one before. He follows me everywhere and keeps apologizing. I'm telling you the truth. I am. Why can't anybody see it? Why can't they see the maggots or Oyashiro-Sama? Everybody's trying to fool me. I know they can see them too. No, please stop. I don't want to get another shot. Pulled back to reality by Takano again?
落ち着いた?
No. No, she's not. She's not okay. So that was interesting. I don't know if this scene is fully over, so we're going to keep going just a little longer. Probably. Let me go back. No, so yeah, we've still got... I don't want to risk going too far back and losing this. Or like going too far forward and losing what we've seen, but this conversation doesn't seem to be fully over. We're gonna see what they're talking about. If they don't wrap it up, we'll keep going. If they're kind of wrapping it up, we will talk about what we just saw, because that was big. That was potentially very big, right? All that talk of the maggots, how others couldn't see them, how she heard from Oyashiro-Sama, and how she might go crazy and die if they were left there. And I'm like, that's interesting. Very interesting stuff. It could explain a lot, right? My theory for what exactly entails Hinamizawa syndrome might be revised. At least a bit. I was breathing hard, and Mio-san was holding my shoulders. I could feel that the terrible memory I'd been trying to forget was awakening. The doctors told me that the memory was just my delusion. They told me that since I blamed myself for the divorce, I unconsciously had a desire to blame someone else for it, and I unconsciously connected the desire to the folk tale of Oyashiro-Sama that I read when I was little. I got drug treatment, received counseling, and waited. I gradually got better, and that proved the things I saw were just a hallucination. The doctors asked my father to consider moving to Hinamizawa if possible. Fortunately, he wanted to change his living environment to heal his pain from the divorce as well. So, we came back to Hinamizawa. After we came back to Hinamizawa, I felt it. I felt it in my bones that this was the place we should live. And I also felt Oyashiro-sama's blessing. I definitely felt it. I felt the curse of Oyashiro-sama starting to break. I was free. After I moved here, I went to the clinic in Gogura for a while. The doctor gave me the same poisonous-looking pills, and I kept taking them for a while. The terrible memory gradually became unclear. Whenever I tried to remember it, I could only remember the strong side effects of the pills, and it made me dizzy. That's how I regained my peace. And then I changed my name, Rena. The reason was because my name reminded me of those bad memories. I didn't want to have anything icky in my life anymore. That's why I came up with the idea of taking icky things out. After I took the I of icky out from my name, Rena, there were only Re and N left. That's how Rena was born. I feel like this has to be a crazy localization thing. How far off is this from the original explanation? I feel like that cannot even be close. But maybe it keeps the kind of vibe, you know? That's how Rena was born. I liked that. When I was introduced to my classmates, I told them to call me Rena. Since then, that had been my name. I'm living my new life as Rena. I cut away all the sad things that happened when I was Rena. My father still calls me Rena, but I don't feel bad as long as it was just my father and my relatives. But then Rena came into my life one day, and she called me Rena. Because she called me Rena, those colored lights started flickering again. I should stop. I should forget about it. The lights were still flickering.
すみません。私、だいぶ取り乱してました。
Yes. Yes. To be fair, given everything you said about the maggots and whatnot, I wouldn't blame you. That would probably induce panic attacks in me as well.
小声で何かつぶやいてたわね。落ち着いたならよかったわ。
Judging by Mio-san's reaction, I wasn't panicking as badly as I thought I was. That's good, maybe you kept it internal. But I've probably had those panicked hallucinations several times. If I started screaming and yelling like I once did, they'd take me away to a hospital again for sure.
私は
Guess you learned to
あの
manage
異常
it.
な中で確かにお社様に会ったんです。もちろん。信じられませんよね。
I mean, yeah, that's basically the TLDR of everything we've seen here. Mio-san smiled, looking a little confused. I couldn't blame her. I didn't expect her to believe it. I'm sure it was just a strange memory I created for myself in my hallucinations. Why do I feel like she's about to be like, you're right? I can't believe I can't trust myself. That's the worst feeling of all.
レナちゃん、まず一つ安心してほしいの。
はい。
レナちゃんが怖がっているタタリ、つまり血の中にいたというウジ虫。それはお社様が言うには、ひなみ沢にいる限りは大丈夫なんでしょう？
Right. I don't think that's completely true, but...
ええ、そう言ってました。
なら、怯えることはないじゃない。安心して。あなたは今、ひなみ沢にいる。まあ、この図書館は沖宮だけど、このくらいの距離なら、お社様も許してくれるわね。血管の内側に何かがうごめいているなんて。
それは。
It's kind of
はい。
an evil question.
だから安心して。
I feel like that's the easiest way to make someone feel like they feel that, even if they don't.
あなたは今、お社様の戒律をちゃんと守ってる。だから、何も恐れなくていいの。だってそうでしょね。
はい。はい。
I didn't know until then that she was such a warm-hearted person. Yeah, I'm kind of shocked for all my talk of She's evil. Right, she seems to be genuinely, in this moment, like, she seems genuinely good-natured, right? Like, she's trying to help Rena calm down, right? I don't know. She just feels so manipulative. I almost wonder if this is somehow a part of her manipulation as well. Like, maybe she does need to worry about that. And she's like, no, don't worry about that at all. Never, no, that's all wrong. You know? I met many doctors and talked to them about this, but they always ignored me and didn't really listen. All they did was give me a shot of the drug I hated. On the other hand, Mio-san didn't deny my story or the existence of Oyashiro-Sama. The people in this village whispered behind her back that she's a little crazy. But she was actually a very kind person, I thought.
レナちゃん、私は今の話全部信じるわ。
ありがとうございます。そう言ってくれた人は初めてかもです。
それは私も同じよ。私の話をバカにしないでちゃんと聞いてくれた人はあなたが初めて。
I feel like Shion wasn't exactly clowning you, but
私たち、いい友達になれそうね。
Mio-san smiled, touching my head with hers.
なら、私の秘蔵のファイルとスクラップも貸してあげるわね。本当に本当の門外不出。私以外の誰にも見せる気がなかったんだけど、レナちゃんには特別に読ませてあげてもいい気がするわ。
This just feels so blatantly manipulative. Like we saw this same exact song and dance.
あなたなら、バカにしないでちゃんと読んでくれそうな気がするし。
She took a few scrapbooks out of her paper bag and handed them to me.
ぜひ読んで感想を聞かせてね。あるいはひょっとすると、レナちゃんにしかわからないことなのかもしれない。
Mio-san was acting mysteriously. She smiled mischievously and put her index finger on her lips as a sign to keep it a secret.
あと、このスクラップ帳と私がそういう研究しているのは内緒よ。
内緒ですか？はい、わかりました。
だって、こんな研究をしているのが連中に知られたら、今朝。
She laughed after she said that. They might erase her. That's what she said. And she went missing. She left me her scrapbooks, but that's not all there is to it. It's the way Tomatake-san died. Yeah. I didn't even, obviously I connected that to the throat clawing thing, but I didn't connect that to, like, right now, how Rena might make that connection. Oishi-san said he committed suicide because of a state of excitation caused by using some kind of drug. But I know what really happened. I didn't tell Oishi-san about it. I don't think he'd have believed me even if I told him. Without a doubt, Tomatake-san died trying to get rid of the maggots. It was nothing other than the curse of Oyashiro-Sama. To never leave Hinamizawa isn't the only rule of Oyashiro-Sama. There are more. He might have broken one of them without knowing it. Oishi-san told me. Tomatake-san was taking pictures with his camera flash on during the sacred ritual dance, and some people got mad at him for it. Did Oyashiro-sama put his curse on Tomatake because he violated the sacred ritual dance? It might be for another reason. Anyway, he died from the curse of Oyashiro-sama without a doubt. Did that mean Oyashiro-sama put his curse on Mio-san too? Investigating the gods is the same as getting close to the gods. It's disrespecting them. But Mio-san told me that they might get rid of her if they find out about her investigation. By they, she meant humans. Plus, according to her theory, the three families are in a conspiracy to revive the faith of Oyashiro-sama. But I can tell by the way Tomatake-san died that it was the act of the curse. I'm certain about that because I experienced the curse myself. And at first glance, that seemed incompatible with those conspiracy theories about human beings. I remember that Oishi-san told me something about some kind of drug that can make a person commit suicide. So do the three families have a secret drug that can cause the curse of Oyashiro-sama? That's impossible. Plus, I didn't get any shots of a suspicious drug like that. I had a normal life in Ibaraki. I wasn't involved with the Sonozaki family or the Kimiyoshi family. Oishi-san asked me a favor. He asked for me to tell him secretly if I saw or heard anything suspicious. It could be about Mi-chan, Rika-chan, or anybody in the village. Mio-san believed my story about Oyashiro-sama. Now she's gone. Tomatake-san died by doing the same thing I did. Oh no. I don't want to get involved in the curse of Oyashiro-Sama. Is this a conspiracy of a group of fanatical cult members? Or is it the curse of Oyashiro-Sama? Is everything just a set of coincidences? Or maybe it's a mixture of a conspiracy and the curse. I don't know. Is it the work of humans, the curse, or a coincidence? Oh no. Even the light of the sunset was making me feel dizzy. When did the sunlight in Hinamizawa get so mean? Mio-san told me to keep her investigation secret. I have her top secret scrapbooks. They might hold the truth about everything. When I realized that, I got scared all of a sudden. I might end up the same way as Mio-san because I have her scrapbooks. If it's a conspiracy, I'll be erased. If it's the curse, I'll be cursed. I should burn the scrapbooks. That's the safest thing to do. But Mio-san believed my story. Mio-san listened to me without laughing. I feel wrong to burn them without taking a look. If it's a conspiracy, I have to expose it. If it's the curse, I have to break it. I shouldn't run away. I should fight. That's right, I decided to fight to seize my happiness. I shouldn't give in to misfortunes. I have to fight. I'm going to get rid of all the things that are trying to ruin my peaceful life. I'm going to read her scrapbooks when I get home. I started walking faster. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. Very interesting stuff. I want to see what these tips are, but we've definitely got some things to talk about. The lunch takeout list. That's not what I expected the tip would be. So I guess the next chapter maybe is when we get into this. Well, I don't know exactly what the lunch takeout list is. Wait, hold on. It looks like the scrapbook, maybe? Hold on. ATTN? What does that mean? And it's obviously some kind of abbreviate. Let me, like... Attention. Okay, attention. Kuroda Mental Clinic. Hello. To get straight to the point, we can assume that this is an acute case of post-traumatic stress disorder. The patient is subject to tremendous stress because of her parents' sudden divorce and being forced to choose to live with either her mother or her father. Furthermore, the patient firmly believes that she was responsible for her parents' divorce, which further drives her to self-mutilation. The patient's largest shock stems from a sense of betrayal of her own household, which she believed was an absolute safe haven. Henceforth, there's a high possibility that the patient will resort to psychological defense measures to protect her family. For example, she might feel high disdain for any person of the opposite sex who approaches her father. She might feel uncomfortable about having other people in her home. She may also display eccentric behaviors in order to keep people away from it. As an example of the latter, there are reported cases of patients unconsciously bringing home garbage. Yeah, well, literally all of these happened. It's highly important that the patient remains in close communication with her father. By deepening the communication between the two of them, it'll strengthen their family bond and loosen up her anxiety. Since the patient only shows signs of an acute syndrome in this case, there's a very good chance that she'll recover within 3 months with her father's support and proper medication. However, it's common for a patient who seemed to have recovered to have a sudden reoccurrence of flashback even after 10 years. Her father is still fairly young, and there's still a chance that he could remarry. However, seeing an unfamiliar member of the opposite sex through remarriage could trigger a flashback in the patient, which may lead to avoidance behavior or hyper-awareness. Please explain this part thoroughly to the father in order for him to understand the recovery process. Should the father decide to remarry, it's recommended that he should hold off on telling the patient until she reaches the age where she's capable of living independently. Also, the cause of the patient's psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, delusional parasitosis, seems to be its own culture-bound syndrome. Okay. So, I mean, obviously this lines up pretty well with what the father was, what her dad was attempting, right? Attempting to wait until, like at least a bit, but just didn't really work out like that by the end. The patient blindly believes that leaving her home village will cause a curse, and that this curse was the cause of her parents' divorce. We believe this is a subconscious defensive mechanism to reduce her mental trauma by shifting the blame from herself to her village's curse. According to the patient's statement, the culture of her home village is extremely strict and exclusive. The patient believes that there's no way to be saved from the curse other than by going back to the village, as the curse will continue as long as she lives in her current environment. Through this, we see an inclination of schizophrenia, and believe the chances are high that the patient will continue to alter their perceived reality. Schizophrenia, a case where patients' personalities are reduced, causing altered perceptions of reality and delusions. Her delusion about the maggots dwelling in her blood is a perfect example, and it's also the cause of her psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior. When a delusion involves psychosomatic self-mutilating behavior, it's extremely dangerous. I highly recommend for the father to move back to the village if he's financially capable. Allowing her to live with relatives in the village might also work. If such a strong belief can induce symptoms such as self-mutilation, then there might be other cases similar to this one. Perhaps prior medical files that document similar culture-bound syndromes may be available at a large medical institution in her local area. It'll then be possible to provide her better and more accurate mental care for the patient by obtaining these case files. This B5 size letter was with a bunch of memos. I just made up a word that was not even there. The following was on the backside of the letter: 1 Chukadon, 3 Shanghai style Gomoku Yakisoba, 1 large fried rice. They love to end their very serious tips with something a little goofy. So, okay, so the doctors obviously thought she was just, they literally say it. They thought she was just schizophrenic. And that she's suffering from PTSD as a result of the divorce. Logically speaking, it actually makes a lot of sense. I think the doctors probably made pretty good deductions for the situation, but ultimately I think they're wrong. Alright, so here's the thing. You could argue that these are delusions, right? You very well could. But whether they're real or they're delusions, I think you have to consider the fact that everyone who seems to have this same Hinamizawa craziness has these kinds of delusions. Like, they have delusions, and they all seem to be pretty similar, which is why I think it's more tied to that rather than they're just all schizophrenic and their like delusions are all the same thing. It just doesn't make sense to me that all of them would have this delusion of some kind of figure following them and apologizing, for example, right? But there are definitely like some kind of delusions, hallucinations, whatever, right? The big thing is, the big thing is the maggots, right? So let's briefly talk about that kind of flashback we got of Rena, who, first of all, I know I mentioned this briefly, but that scene, like, the way they just casually glanced over at the time, like, oh yeah, I was cutting. I cut my neck, actually. I'm like, oh, you were just trying to kill yourself. Like, that's terrible. Like, that shows the state of mind she was in. So, to a degree, it is kind of hard to, I don't want to say take her seriously, but take everything at face value. But she cut her neck, and she swears up and down she saw maggots crawling out of her neck and then going back into her bloodstream. And that's what got her to, she started trying to claw at her throat, right? And at another point, she cuts a vein like on her wrist and sees the maggots again and is trying to squeeze them out, right? Look, the thing is, this fits quite well with my parasite theory. If these maggots are just some kind of parasite that is actually quite literally within them, it could explain things, potentially. The thing is, it's kind of hard to know whether I actually believe Rena or not on that one. But I think there's a much higher chance in the game is actively leading you to believe right now that is actually kind of reality. The thing is, if they were actually there, though, I feel like they would have been visible, right, to other people, right? This isn't something to my... Look, maybe it is. But this doesn't seem like something where it's like, oh yeah, these are just invisible to everyone else. Only Rena can see them, but they're real, right? Does that make sense? Like, not really, and at the same time. But at the same time, it would perfectly explain the throat clawing thing. So maybe it is just another one of those shared delusions that is actually part of like the Hinamizawa craziness. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe this doesn't really help parasite theory as much as I kind of thought it might, right? Because like on one hand, if there were maggots chilling in their bloodstream, that would make sense. Like in theory, that would make sense. Maybe it's somehow from the swamp, right? From the Onigifuchi swamp. It infects people and gradually spreads throughout their bloodstream, and then eventually it can maybe cause the symptoms. And I'm like, look, that kind of makes sense. Like actually, I kind of think it does. But at the same time, like I said, if they were actually there, you would just be able to see them, right? Like, so I don't know. It's just so strange because like it feels like it's so close to like explaining my theories like perfectly, but at the same time that little bit just doesn't match up, right? So I don't know. Either way, I think the real important thing is that Rena truly believed that she saw those maggots, and she truly believes that she talked to Oyashiro-Sama. She can't remember anything about that encounter, basically, besides them saying, look, I can protect you from now. And the delusions kind of went away for a bit. But it's going to come back, right? Like, the curse will return, right? Unless you come back to Hinamizawa. Now, what is the cause of that? I don't know. Was that just some crazy delusion? If I have this idea that Rika can, like, communicate with people from a distance, like, I guess it could have just been Rika being like, hey, you can't really be helped if you're over there, to be honest. You're going to need to come back if you want any chance. I don't know. Like, does that make a ton of sense to me? No, but it could work. It could. I feel like I'm starting to lean into a little more fantastical explanations with Rika, which I don't love at times, you know? I don't always love that. Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really know how this alters my theories, because like I said, there's just so many ways it could go, depending on whether we believe Rena or not. But on the maggot thing, on what's going on with, like, what was the Oyashiro-Sama she saw? Was it like a delusion? Was this a real thing? If it was a real thing, how? Like, I don't know. There's so much going on. It's kind of hard to, like, come up with a theory right now. I feel like this is a chapter that we might just want to let play out a little more. I wouldn't be shocked if I'm trying to answer questions that will be revealed in the next episode, right? For example, right? Maybe not literally next episode, but maybe. Just a lot of interesting ideas being strung about there, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the kind of resolution on some of those things. Like I said, it's just the maggots. Yeah, the maggots and Oyashiro-Sama, those memories are a big deal. Also, one thing that I haven't really brought up too much recently, like in the conclusion at least of this video, is this whole, like, this kind of feels like, in a way, it's playing out like chapter 1, but from a reverse perspective, which is interesting. And when I say reverse perspective, I don't mean necessarily that, like, we're following Rena in the normal events of chapter 1. It feels like we're following chapter 1, but this time it's Rena who gets separated from the group and talks to Oishi and, like, is told, like, if you see anything suspicious, you gotta report that to me secretly, right? And And so I'm curious if it's going to kind of go down the same way. Rena's going to kind of go crazy and things maybe end the same way. I don't know. I'm really still very interested to see where this chapter is going to go from here. Right, my best bet is chapter 1 parallels as to what we should expect, but I have a feeling we'll get a little more than just that, right? Or maybe it'll be like kind of chapter 1 parallels, but we'll actually kind of get some answers, right? Like what caused Tomatake's death, for example, right? Very interesting stuff. I feel like I'm not saying much because I don't really know what to say. So much of what we saw in this episode was not hard answers, but suggestions for what those answers could be, right? Or like possibilities. And I don't know what to think just now, and without extending the video unnecessarily, I can't really sit here and make theories. So that will probably be all for this episode, to be honest. This was a very interesting one, I thought. It raised a lot of things to think about, and I'm excited to maybe further think about them and record another video. I don't know when exactly that'll come out. I'm glad I didn't make promises in the last video. In a lot of videos I've been like, next video is probably coming out in a few days, and the last one I didn't do that. I'm not going to do that again. I don't know when this next video will be out. Hopefully it won't be long. But whenever it does come out, I hope to see you guys there. Peace.